Life is full, but what if fullness isn't the problem? I was a little stressed out actually watching that video just now. A little spoiler alert, fullness is not the problem. Today we're starting a new series called First Things First, and I'm really excited that you're all joining us for that. In fact, if today is your first day or one of your first days, I just want to say you've come on a great time. We're starting a new series, so you're not going to be behind. You're going to be right along with everybody else. The WellSpring welcome is today, so you can get your questions answered and get some individual attention right across the hallway here. And also, groups are starting, so you can jump right in and be part of that on the ground floor and get connected relationally and all those things. Let me just assure you as we start this series is not about squeezing one more thing into your already overfull life. That's not what this is about. That doesn't work. Fullness isn't the issue. It's something deeper than that. So glad you're here, glad you're joining us out. I'm going to start this morning just a simple statement to kind of get us all on the same page. And here is the statement: something is off. Something's off. You know, if you're building something, whether you're doing it from scratch or maybe you're putting together a shelf or something that came in a box with all the pieces and parts, and you get done and it's just not quite square. Or you hang something up on the wall and your wife comes in and is like, did you use a level on that? Because something's not quite. Or you're baking something in the kitchen and you taste it and it's like, I must have missed a step because something's off. Something doesn't feel right with this product. I sense that in our culture right now. I sense it in our community. I sense it in our economy. I sense it in the church. Something is just off. And I've even seen studies that are backing up what I'm describing to you. Over the last few years, for example, over the last few years, our culture has gone through what has been described as the, quote, Great Resignation. Incredibly high numbers. If you're in management, you know this already. Incredibly high numbers of turnover within companies of people leaving their job, not because they got fired or laid off, but because they're choosing to leave to go somewhere else. They cite burnout, they cite stress, they cite low job satisfaction. I think many people have just left because they sensed something was off. They didn't know what it was or how to control it, so this is something they can do. We certainly saw that in the church. A lot of churches began to see people during those years leave the church they were connected to and go somewhere else. And sometimes they would say COVID or politics or something else. I think often it was just like they felt something was wrong, something's off, and I don't know what to try. I don't want to switch houses. I don't want to move my kid's school district. Let's just try a different church. There's something's wrong. Something's off. In fact, I even saw a prediction from economists that said the economy, we had such a high spike of people leaving their job. And then as the economy had more uncertainty coming into the election with inflation and all of that, there began to be a settling of that where people weren't switching jobs, but job dissatisfaction stayed very high. And so they're saying if the economy settles and begins to have more certainty in the economy, you're going to see another spike because 2 out of 3 employees currently don't feel satisfied in their job, but they feel stuck financially. So if the economy begins to take off, you're going to see a lot of people switching jobs again. And even on a more alarming note, I saw a very similar study in regards to marriage. That a lot of people are in marriages right now that they don't feel satisfied with, but they're staying because of economics, because of the uncertainty around the economy. And if that changes, their marriage changes, and they'll do something else. Something's off. I would suggest, no disrespect to economists, no disrespect to pundits, I would suggest that the thing that's off is actually spiritual. And we're going to try to fix that in this series, okay? Let me give you a comparison between vitamins and painkillers. Now, there's a lot of similarity. Both are pills, both are taken orally, both are done for health reasons, but that really is where the similarities end. People take vitamins for their health because they feel like that's probably best for them. They think it'll help them down the road if they take enough vitamins. But you forget sometimes, or maybe some mornings you'll get in a rush and not get it done, or you miss a day here and there and don't ever come back and make it up. And it's not like that next day you're feeling so much different because you didn't take the vitamin. And even sometimes you'll go to the doctor, and the doctor are like, are you taking your vitamins? You need to be taking your vitamins. And you're like, oh yeah, I probably should be taking my vitamins. But it's kind of something you take or don't take, and you hit or miss, and you don't really know what the difference. Painkillers are different. Painkillers, you don't have to be reminded to take a painkiller. If you've got a massive headache or a migraine headache, or you've had some sort of injury and you've been subscribed to take Tylenol or Advil or something extra strength, you don't have to be reminded. The doctor doesn't have to chide you about that. When you're hurting, You got a headache or a migraine or an injury, you want something for relief. Now, some sermons are more in the vitamin category. Some sermon series are in the vitamin category. They're good for you. You ought to take them. It's probably a good idea. That's not this sermon series. This sermon series is more of a painkiller. Something is off. People are hurting, and it's spiritual, and we're going to try to fix it. Okay? To get us started, let me tell you an old story. Some of you have heard this before, some of you may not have, but it's an old story, not original, of course, with me. And so the story goes, a professor stands in front of his classroom, and he takes out a glass jar, and it's full of big rocks. And he has these rocks in here, he puts one at a time in there, and he gets it all full of big rocks, and he sets it down on the desk, and he says to his classroom, is this full? And they're all like, yeah, it's pretty full of rocks. He says, it's not full. And then he reaches down again, and he gets another jar, and he adds some small pebbles to the jar, and now it's full all the way to the top with pebbles. And he said, okay, now is it full? And the class senses a double cross. They sense a trick question. They're like, I think, but I'm not sure. He said, it's not full. And then he pulls out a jar of sand, and he begins to pour sand into the jar, and it sifts down longer than I'm probably going to give it. He sifts down here, and he lets it work its way in, and it works all the way around in. And he goes, now is it full? And people are really not sure. And they're like, I don't know if it's full or not. He says, it's not full. And then he pulls out a jug of water, and he fills it full of water all the way up to the top, and it soaks down in a little bit. He says, now is it full? And they said, I think so. I think it's full. He said, now it is full. He said, what's the moral of the story? The kids shoots his hand up and said, you can always fit more into your life. He said, that's not the moral of the story. That's the lie. The lie is you can always fit something else in. The moral of the story is if you don't put the big rocks in first, they won't fit. Our series goes around the idea that if you don't put the big rocks in first, they're not going to fit. Jesus often told stories. He told stories more than he honestly gave sermons. He told stories about all kinds of things. We call them parables today, but in his original audience, they would have just heard them as stories. He told stories about farming, about building, about treasure hunting. Jesus told stories about all kinds of things, and he didn't tell them stories to teach them about those things. He didn't necessarily want them to learn more about farming. He told them stories about farming to teach them about life. He told them stories about construction or treasure hunting to teach them about themselves. And today, I want to tell three of Jesus' kind of most famous stories. He has a lot of famous stories. I want to tell three specific ones. And we're not going to read them like we might sometimes do. That's fine to do, to read them and pull a verse at a time, or have you open your Bibles or put them up on the screen, and we can pick out this verse or that word or this key phrase. We're not doing that today, because that's not how they would have heard them originally. So I'm going to put the references on the screen. You can go look at them later. You can think about each phrase and each word and really give them more attention. That's a great idea to do that. But for this morning, I just want you to hear it as a story, because that's how they would have heard. And then we're going to try to tie the three of them together, which I think will work well. Story number one. One day Jesus is leaving Jerusalem, and he's walking. If you've been to Jerusalem, it's kind of up on a hill, and the temple is up on a hill, and he's leaving the temple area, and he's going down around Jerusalem through what's called the Kidron Valley. And he's going, as you go down through the Kidron Valley, there's a lot of vineyards there and vine groves there. And he's walking through these vine groves, and as he's passing by the vineyard, he's pointing out this particular vine that's all lush and green and full and has all these limbs and leaves and is so healthy. And he's talking to him about that. And then he sees another limb that's kind of gotten broken off, and it's even though it's right in the middle and sort of looks like it's connected to the vine, it's not, and it's all dry and cracked, and he probably cracks one to show him the sound. And then there's some limbs on the ground that are totally disconnected, and he points out those. He says these are just being collected to go into the fire. And he uses it to tell a whole story and a context about our relationship with God. That you and I are designed to be in relationship with God, to abide with God, to stay connected with God. And when we do, the life of God pumps through us. That's how we were designed to live. But if we don't have God pumping life into us, then we're just disconnected. Bottom line, either God is pumping life into your soul or he's not. And if he's not, you are going to be exhausted. Story number two. On another day, Jesus tells a different group, a different set of stories. He talks about a farmer scattering seed out onto his ground. And as the seed falls out onto his ground, it falls into 4 different categories across the day. Some parts of the land were really good land, and it grew and the produced crops, and it was wonderful. Some of the seed fell on a path that was really packed down hard from people walking on it, and so the seed didn't get down into the dirt. And he compares that to the Bible not getting into our life, and so the birds came and ate it up. And then some seed fell along really weedy ground, and as it fell in, it grew up, but there was a lot of competition for the nourishment, and competition for the sunlight, and competition for the water, and so it grew, but it stunted and never really produced much. And then a 4th section fell among the rocky ground, and it went down into the dirt and began to produce a harvest as well, but as soon as it got dry, as soon as the sun got really hot, it didn't have a lot of roots, and so it didn't stay healthy, and all of that killed it and withered it off because it wasn't connected to good soil. Now, we could talk about all 4 of those, and that could be a whole sermon series of time to talk about all 4 of those. I want to focus in on that last one. Jesus says that when God's word comes into your life, and you begin to grow, and God's life begins to grow through you, you've got to have roots. And he tells us what roots are. Roots in this story is connection to good soil, and good soil in his story is Christians following after God. And if you and I go through this life alone, without connections to other Christians, we're going to look fine until we don't. And when the sun gets hot, and the ground gets dry, and the weather gets harsh, we're going to wither. Bottom line, other Christians are pumping life into your soul, or they're not. And if they're not, you're going to be withered. One more story. On another day, Jesus tells us a story about a man going on a trip. And he's walking through a field that's not his field, and for whatever reason, he gets off the path. Maybe he needed to take a break and sit down a minute. Maybe he was just bored and kind of kicking at the dirt. I don't know, but somehow he finds something underneath the edge of the top of the soil. Maybe he kicks it, maybe he scratches it with a stick, but it makes a different kind of sound. And so he gets down, he begins to scratch around and realizes it's a box, and he begins to scratch around the box and pulls the box out so he can look at it and opens it up, and it's full of treasure. And he quickly estimates how much treasure is there, and he realizes this treasure is worth far more than everything he owns. It's worth so much that he realizes if he were to sell everything, he could buy this field, and then he would own that treasure, and it would be worth far more than all the things that he owns. And so he hides it back, and he covers it up, and he goes on about his way feeling like he knows something that everybody else doesn't know. This is not an obligation. This is something he's excited about. And so he goes home, and he liquidates everything. He puts the house on the market. He sells the SUV, trades in the van, sells everything. Just borrows an old clunker from a buddy for a couple of days until he can get something back. Sells everything he can get. He has a big yard sale, puts stuff on garage sale. I mean, he's going crazy, liquidating everything. And he finally scratches enough money together to allow him to buy this field. And he doesn't do it with obligation. He goes to the bank like the cat who found the mouse. And he goes to the bank and he buys this field knowing that he just became very, very, very wealthy. Bottom line, either you realize the true value of the treasure, of faith, of the gospel, or you don't. And if you don't, you will scramble to fill the hole. So let me ask you a question. When you look at your life, does exhausted seem to strike a chord? Do you sometimes feel withered? Do you sometimes feel like you're scrambling? Do you feel like something's off? Because it's not from a lack of effort. This is not about me trying to get you to jam one more thing into your life, because the reality is, I know your life is full. And I know that a lot of you are trying to stick more and more things in. If you could, you'd squeeze a little more something in. It's not from a lack of effort, but it's not going to work because fullness isn't really the problem. Now, what I'd like us to do is go back and look at each of those 3 stories and pull the main point out, because the Bible talks about all of those things. And I think they all go together this morning. So the first story is Jesus talking about the vineyard. Jesus says that you and I are to have a vibrant relationship with God. Having a vibrant relationship with God is, in Jesus' analogy, a big rock. And if you don't have it, you're going to feel exhausted, even if your life is full of lots of other good things. And if you try to add it, if you fool yourself thinking, I can just add this to the top, a vibrant relationship with God, I'll add that to my already full life, it won't work. Your life is already probably too full. But if you remember how valuable this rock is, if you realize that your soul flourishes when this rock is part of your life, it won't feel like a sacrifice to make room. It will feel like the smartest thing in the world for you to do. The Bible talks about this a lot. Jeremiah 29 verse 12 says, "You will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you, and you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart." I want you to know that no matter what your walk with God has been up to this point, whether you have been a follower of Jesus or not, or maybe you've pushed him away, today you can call on God, you can pray to God, and he'll listen to you. And if you seek him, you'll find him today. James chapter 4 verse 8, James says, "Come near to God and God will come near to you." That's a promise from the Lord. So if you have a distance between you and God, you don't have to make up that distance alone. If you begin to move towards God, he will move towards you because he's already in Christ done everything to cover the ground. Psalms 145 says, "The Lord is trustworthy in all that he does, and faithful in all he promises, and faithful in all he does. The Lord upholds all who fall and lifts up all who are bowed down. The Lord is near to all who call on him." If you call on the Lord, he's going to be near to you. He's going to close that gap that you feel between you and him. So the question that I have for you is this rock, this vibrant relationship with the Lord, is that part of your life? I didn't say, do you believe in God? I didn't say, are you a Christian? I said, are you a part of a vibrant relationship with God? Because if you're not, when's it going to be part of your life? And please don't do what some of us do and think, well, I'll just try to squeeze that in on top of everything else. That'll work. That'll be right. It won't work. You're just fooling yourself to put it on top of your already crowded life. And please don't hear this as a vitamin. Like, yeah, I ought to do that. Yeah, that'd probably be good for me. This is not a vitamin. Some of you are exhausted and in pain, and the Lord will fix this. Your life was not meant to be without him. You've got to get that into your life. Let me make a confession to you about something completely different. So several years ago, I found myself in pretty bad physical shape. I know it's hard to believe looking at me today, but that was true. But there was a day when I thought, I'm in pretty bad shape. So I bit the bullet. I spent the money and said, I'm going to go to this CrossFit gym here in town. And they were great. They were very, very supportive. It felt like the Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the other. A bunch of 20-year-old in shape guys and this fat 40-something, that didn't work well that way. But they were very kind to me and all those sort of things. And I'm cheap, so I'm spending all this money to go to that, to get the coaching. You're allowed to go 3 times a week. I went 3 times every week. I'm not missing a single one, not because I was driven to be in shape, just because I'm cheap. And so I went 3 times a week, 3 times a week, 3 times a week for 6 months, learned a ton, got in much better shape. But it's expensive, and so are kids. And so I said, I can't do all of that, and apparently you can't get rid of the kids. So I was like, okay, something's got to go. So I quit going to the CrossFit gym, but it kind of freaked me out because I'd finally gotten in a routine that I was willing to do, and I thought, I'm going to step out of that, and then I'm not going to go. And so I had a friend who was kind of in that same spot, and he said, why don't we work out together? Because I want to do that too. And so I began to go to his garage every 3 times a week, and we would work out. And I stayed in the routine. It was great. And 3 mornings a week, we'd go for several years, and then he moved. And so I began to work out in my own garage. I'm going to do this. I can do this. And so I worked out 3 times a week in my garage, and then twice a week in my garage, every week, twice a week, and then once a week, and then once every other week, and pretty soon I just quit. Now catch this. I still would watch things sometimes on YouTube about how to do this move or that move or this exercise program or that exercise program. I didn't deconvert from working out. I didn't think all of that was stupid. I didn't deconstruct my physical whatever. I just drifted. I was doing it alone. I didn't have anybody to be accountable with me, and I just drifted. And a lot of us are exhausted right now spiritually, not because you've deconverted from your faith, not because you've become an atheist. You're exhausted because you drifted, and you never have anybody walking along with you, and it's hard to do it alone. So I want to ask you to commit right now to make a vibrant relationship with God a part of your life. So get the Bible into your life every day, several times a week. Get it in there. If you read a little bit now, read a little more. If you never read any, just read a little bit. Just do a little something. Begin to pray more than you do. If you never pray, begin to pray every day. Just wake up in the morning and say, God, today's your day. If that's all you pray, that's a great start. Do that. At the end of the day, say, God, thank you for giving me another day. Just do something every day. And then don't miss this part. Answer the question right now. Who's going to do this with me? Because if you're doing it alone, you're setting yourself up to drift. This is how you got exhausted in the first place. Don't do that alone. And probably it's not going to be somebody in your household that's going to be that partner for you, because you can lie to each other and that doesn't really work that well. All right? All right, second story. Farmer scattering the seed. Jesus says you need to have a vibrant relationship with other Christ followers in your life. That's a big rock. To have people in your life who are also following God, are also trying to go the same direction you're going. And if you don't have that, he says when the sun comes out, when the weather gets harsh, when it gets drought-like conditions, you're going to wither. If you try to add that on top of everything else, it's not going to fit. You've got to put that in first. But if you remember how valuable it is, it's not going to feel like a sacrifice to you. It's going to be like the wisest thing you've ever done to create room for that in your life. You know, the Bible talks about this a lot. 1 Thessalonians 5 says, encourage one another and build each other up. I hear some people say sometimes, I don't need the church. I don't need other people. It's just me and God. You can't obey that, just you and God. You can't. And the Bible's full of statements like that. Like this one, Romans 12 says, don't just pretend to love others, really love them. Love each other with genuine affection. Take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. You can't do that alone. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. You can't do any of that by yourself. You've got to have a vibrant relationship with other Christian people to do it. The third one is a little more sassy, which makes me laugh. I think it's also true. Galatians 6 says, share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. That's what it means to obey the law of Christ. If you think you're too important to help someone, you're only fooling yourself. You're just not that important. Now, I think that's funny because the number one reason I hear for people not being involved in a ministry, not being involved in serving some way, not being involved in a group, what's the number one reason you hear? You know the answer to this. Too busy. It just doesn't fit. I've tried to make it fit. It just doesn't fit. And I don't mean this offensively. God loves you. You're really important to me. But you're not that important. You know, you need to be in a group. I'm in a group. You need that. But you're probably not going to put it on top of everything else. And it's not one of those vitamin type things like this would probably be good for you. You ought to think about this. This is more a painkiller. Some of you right now have the sun high and the ground's dry and you're withering because you're doing it alone. Don't do this alone. And let me make a deal with you. All of our life groups, some of our Bible studies are doing their own thing because their folks are part of other groups and so they don't want to double up. But all of our life groups are going through this series for the next 4 weeks. So starting this week, for the next 4 weeks, they're going to be doing this series. So we'll preach on Sunday morning and then there'll be a discussion around the topic during the week. So if you don't know anything about the Bible, you can talk along with this. And I think this is one of the most important series we've done in quite some time. So some of you I know are in groups, and that's great. You'll be able to get this. This is not one of those vitamin things. This is something your life needs. So I'm going to ask you to commit to two things. Number one, be here for the entire series. Make that a priority. If you're in town, be here. Don't allow yourself to sleep in. Don't allow yourself to get busy with other things. Don't do yard work or whatever. Like, prioritize this. Fit that in first. Don't try to add it on top. If you're out of town for one of the weeks, that happens, catch up online. But if you're in town, make it a priority to be here. Your kids can't connect with the ministry if you're just watching it from a distance. You've got to get them here too. They need part of that as well. And number two, be in a group for this entire series. Now, some of you are in a life group. That's great. You'll be going through this automatically. Some of you have been fixing to get in a life group. Some of you have been fixing to get in a life group for several years. It's time, today. Let's do it today. You can sign up today. You haven't done it yet, do it today. Tim's out in the lobby. He'll get you signed up. You can do that now. Some of you, if you're honest, we might as well be. We're in church, right? If you're honest, some of you would say, I'm not doing the group thing. I'm not going to do that. I've already planned in my head, not doing that. So you can announce it. I'll be polite and listen. I'm not doing it. First of all, remember you're not that important. Can we just decide that right up front? Can I get you to meet me halfway? You're saying I'm not going to be in a group. That's not my long-term thing. I get it. Will you be in a group for the next 4 weeks? So get in a group. We're going through this study. At the end of 4 weeks, go do something else. That's fine. I don't think it's a good idea, but I'll take that. I'll take what I can get. Meet me halfway for the next 4 weeks. As of the end of this week, I think it's filled in some now because the first service, a bunch of people signed up. But going into today, we had 21 groups that still had openings. A lot of our groups are closed because they're already full with too many people. We have 21 as of before this morning started. We still had some room in it. Talk to Tim in the lobby. Get this done. We'll start a new group if we have to. We'll figure this out. We're going to find a spot for you if we run out of space. So number one, be here for the entire series. Number two, be in a group for the entire series. Story number 3, the hidden treasure. Jesus says that putting faith at the center of your life is a big rock. The prioritizing faith and putting it right in the middle, that's a big rock. And without it, your soul's going to be withered and exhausted and properly understood. To put God in the center, if you understood it correctly, it's not going to feel like a burden. It's not going to feel like a sacrifice. In fact, if you understood correctly, you'd be willing to dump all of this just to put God in the middle because you know the value of being able to clear that out. And putting relationships in the middle of it, and putting relationship with God in the middle of it, and putting faith in the middle of it. And to do that, there's probably going to be some of these little rocks that are good things in your life that may not fit anymore. Some of them will still fit, but some of them may not. And if you understood correctly what I'm describing, that'd be the best sacrifice in the world. It wouldn't even feel like a sacrifice to you because you know the value of getting the other things in. Let me ask you the question. When you understand your life, when you look at Jesus' stories, do you feel exhausted? It's a spiritual exhaustion. Are you feeling withered? You know, maybe you're doing fine for a while, but now the sun's out. Now it's a little dry. Now it's a little harsher weather, and you feel withered. Do you feel like you're scrambling to fill a hole? Like I've always got to add something. I'm not doing enough. Something's off. Maybe you need to make sure that the big rocks go in first. Maybe before you just add one more thing and one more activity for your kids and one more little thing to fill up the time, maybe you should start by getting the big rocks in first. And once you get those in, everything else will find its rightful spot. Maybe you need to have permission to say no to some stuff. Maybe you need to have permission to say, I'm going to dump this stuff out, and as a family, we're going to start again from scratch. If you're feeling exhausted, if you're feeling withered, if you're feeling scattered, if you're feeling like something's off, let God help. Put the big rocks in first. I want you to bow your head and let me pray together with you. Dear God, I thank you so much that you know us better than we know ourselves. And you, God, know that we're going to be tempted to do all of these different things and try to fill ourselves with all of these different opportunities. And yet you know that underneath it all, you know what matters most. So God, I pray for those who are exhausted now that this wouldn't feel like one more thing. I pray for those who are feeling withered under the harsh conditions of their life. The sun feels too strong. The ground feels too dry. I pray this wouldn't add any shame to their life. This wouldn't be any sense of failure, but it would be clarifying. It'd be permission giving to say no to some stuff that's good, that's just not great. That less would be more. And God, I pray that we would walk out of here and have some hard conversations about what comes in first. Lord, we thank you for Jesus, that he came to this earth. He lived in a way that honors you. He lived in a way that was flourishing for him. And then he sacrificed himself for us because he knew what we needed. And you know what we need still. So we give ourselves more fully to you, God, grateful for what Jesus has done. And we do that in his name.